What's up, guys? Welcome to the line change. Apologies for the delay in this. I've had a bit of a difficult day personally, but let's go ahead and dive right into this. Starting off with our poll results that we had on both our Twitter and Facebook, or no, not Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. I did do a poll and picked a couple things, and asking you guys what would you change in Canucks history. And with the few that I listed, the poll, there were only 5 votes in the poll, but 60% of you said the Canucks defeat Boston in the 2011 Cup final. 20% of you said Canucks not signing Mark Messier, and 20% of you said the Canucks drafting David Pastrnak instead of Jared McCann. And then nobody voted for Canucks trading EP40 instead of Miller. But let's go ahead and dive right into this. I've written down some things that I would change in the 50-plus year Canucks history, and I encourage the rest of you to go ahead and comment in the live chat or comment down below in the video on some things that you would change in Canucks history. But I'm gonna go ahead and start off with the obvious one, and some people may think it's a cop out, but I don't think it is. Or it could be used, but I think it's one that majority of fans will obviously say that they would want to change in Canucks history. That is, of course, Canucks defeating Boston in Game 7 to win the Stanley Cup in 2011. I think that is the most obvious thing that a lot of Canucks fans would want to change in Canucks history if they had the ability to change this. And yeah, that's obviously a big one for me is, changing that, going back in time and being able to change and having the Canucks actually finish it off in Game 7 and win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, that is a big one for a majority of Canucks fans. Number 2 I have is, as I mentioned, Canucks not signing Mark Messier. I think a lot of Canucks fans would absolutely say that one, as everyone knows, how Mark Messier came in and how it was not very, Canucks fans were not big on it. Mark Messier had a bit of a history, and just the way he came in too, obviously bringing in Mike Keenan and then Messier coming in. And then that also led to Trevor Linden leaving the Vancouver Canucks and being traded away. And obviously Mark Messier becoming the captain, I feel as though was a mistake. So that would be certainly something that I would change in Canucks history is the Vancouver Canucks not signing Mark Messier. Another one that we already kind of went over, obviously the Canucks drafting David Pastrnak instead of Jared McCann is a big one. In that draft, the Vancouver Canucks ended up drafting Jared McCann literally right before the Boston Bruins drafted Pastrnak. So that is obviously something that I would change. I mean, just imagine if the Canucks were able to draft David Pastrnak and had him instead of Jared McCann. Obviously, everyone knows Jared McCann ended up being traded from the Vancouver Canucks. He had a short stint with Vancouver and ended up being traded. I don't think that would have happened if the Canucks had drafted Pastrnak. I think, for all we know, Pastrnak, if he had been drafted by the Canucks, there's probably a good chance he'd be a Canuck today if that happened. So there's that one. And then this is a really big one for me. And that is, I would change Roberto Luongo starting in the Heritage Classic game instead of Eddie Lack back in, 2013, 2014. I absolutely would have changed that. Eddie Lack, as much as I love Eddie and how great of a, not just character he was, but a great goaltender he was, Roberto Luongo should have started that game 100%. And I feel as though John Tortorella really messed that up. And that was a major fail on his part, not starting Luongo, who had expressed that he wanted to start in that game. And he had made it known to Torts that he wanted to start that game. And I just felt it was very petty of Torts to not start Luongo. And obviously that likely contributed to Luongo being traded and being unhappy with the organization and, asking for the trade. I think that played a factor into it. So obviously, if I could go back, I would change this 100% for sure. Have Luongo start the Heritage Classic game instead of Eddie Lack, which brings us to my next point, and that is trading Luongo back to Florida. I feel as though if Luongo had started that game in the Heritage Classic, there's probably a good chance he would have stayed and not, asked for a trade, and nor would he have been traded back to Florida. Obviously, there were likely other factors when it came to trading Luongo, but I feel as though him not starting in that Heritage Classic was the straw that broke the camel's back. That is what that was like it for Luongo. That was the last straw. And so I feel as though if Luongo had started the game, he would not have been traded, and he very well could have ended his career with Vancouver, which is something that I think a lot of Canucks fans would have really wanted. I've made it known on this channel how big of a Luongo fan I am, and how I feel as though he was mistreated by the organization and the way he left. I didn't like the way he left, and I still to this day feel as though his number should be up in the rafters in Rogers Arena. Yes, he's in the Ring of Honor, but I feel as though he deserves more than that, as he has been the absolute best goaltender, and the stats prove this and back this up. He's been the best goaltender that the Vancouver Canucks have ever had. So there's that one. And then here's another one that I've actually done a little research into today, actually, and looked more into it. One thing I would change in Canucks history, and this goes back to 1988, and that would be trading for Wayne Gretzky. Supposedly, the Edmonton Oilers offered Gretzky to the Canucks in exchange for 5 first-round picks and $22 million. The Oilers obviously ended up trading him to the Kings for a different package of assets. This is one thing that I would change. Just the chance to have Wayne Gretzky be a Vancouver Canuck, and just the possibility of that would be huge for the Canucks. Absolutely huge. And this ties into my next point, and that is the Canucks signing Gretzky as a free agent in 1996, because there was a possibility that would have happened as well. Back then, I believe apparently Pat Quinn had a verbal agreement with Wayne Gretzky and had spoken to him on the phone, and Gretzky had told him he would sign in the morning. They had a verbal agreement and that he would, officially sign in the morning. But the then CEO of Orca Bay, Nelson Scalbania, disrupted the deal because he wanted it signed right then and there. He wanted it done and signed right away. He was not willing to wait until the morning, which, for lack of a better term, pissed off Wayne Gretzky. And Gretzky was like, okay, it's done then. We're not doing this. So that is one thing for sure that I would change in Canucks history, us signing Wayne Gretzky as a free agent in 1996 and him potentially ending his career as a Vancouver Canuck. I think that would have done huge. It would have done wonders for the Vancouver Canucks if that actually occurred. As I just mentioned, he had a verbal agreement, ended up disrupting it and ending it. Let's look at some of your comments. It's good to see. Cam, good to see you, brother. Yeah, definitely. Starting Luongo would have made all the difference. I 100% agree. Still to this day, that absolutely irritates me that that's how he left. We have Adam Tashasam. Trading quality players was a big mistake. 100%, absolutely. We got Rev Trev again. Should have never traded Cam Neely. Again, 100%. Um, yeah, that's the rumor, trading for Wayne Gretzky for 5 first-round picks. Yeah, I literally just, Googled about it, and that's one of the first things that came up. I was watching something that the Oilers owner at the time says he knew nothing about it and whatnot, but apparently that was the reported deal that the Oilers had offered, 5 first-round picks, which makes you really look at things like, nowadays trading for, that's something you would offer maybe for a guy like Bedard, five first-round picks. Um, I definitely signing Gretzky would have been much better. I definitely 100% agree, and we probably had a better chance of signing Gretzky than we would have trading for him, 100%. And I just, foam at the mouth just thinking of those possibilities of us signing Wayne Gretzky. And supposedly it was like a 3-year deal that was on the table. I forget the exact money amount. I think they said, I want to say 15 million, something like that. But it was a 3-year deal. Another one, Bertuzzi should never have punched. I agree on that. Yeah, that is definitely something that I would change. And it also makes you wonder too, with the whole Messier, coming back to the Messier and us not signing him and it leading to Trevor Linden being traded. I originally was going to include that and, us not trading Linden. But then I thought about it and I was like, if we don't trade Trevor Linden, we don't get Todd Bertuzzi, because Todd Bertuzzi was a part of that Trevor Linden trade from the Islanders. And had we changed that and not done that trade, we never would have had Todd Bertuzzi. We never would have had the West Coast Express. So for that reason, I left that out, because I really struggled with that, because I absolutely loved the West Coast Express. Naslin, Morrison, Bertuzzi. I love that line. And if we hadn't traded Trevor Linden, we never would have had that. So that was a tough one to try and include on this list. See if I can find some more. Obviously, one, if we're talking like recent, one would be not trading JT Miller, obviously. And I know Rev Trev was really gonna like that one. And instead of trading Miller, trading Pedersen to maybe Carolina, keeping Miller, that might be something that I would change. Obviously losing Pedersen would be huge, but at the same time, makes you really wonder, what if, with that. Trying to think of another one just off the top of my head. See, I guess, yeah, Rev Trev, trading EP40 would have been much better. I'm doing a video on it. Yeah, I'm gonna tune into that after this. But yeah, it also makes you kind of wonder about trading Bure. I didn't actually write that down, but I guess that would be something that probably Canucks fans would want to change. Trading Pavel Bure. Obviously that relationship ended up becoming very sour. And Bure was one who wanted out. And I would have much preferred to have kept Bure, obviously. But he wanted out, and things happen. But I want to hear from you guys. As I mentioned, fan engagement. I wanted to hear more from you guys on what you would change. I know I listed a bunch of stuff, and obviously some of the few big ones were, obviously Canucks winning the Stanley Cup in 2011. That would have been obviously huge for Vancouver. Obviously the Luongo thing is a big one, especially for me. Due to me absolutely loving Luongo and thinking that was a huge failure on the Canucks and losing him. It's like what Adam said here: trading quality players away is a big mistake. Another one for recent, you could throw in here as well, is Brock Besser. Not re-signing Brock Besser. I know there's probably like maybe this bit of a chance that the Canucks may still re-sign Brock Besser, but not re-signing him or even not even trading him at the deadline, you could include on this list as well, because it's looking like at this point he's walking for nothing. And you could say the same thing about Pius Suter, as still I haven't heard anything about the Canucks even attempting to re-sign Suter, which, if that ends up happening, you can throw that onto this list on something you would change, because you can't afford to let guys like Besser and Suter just walk for nothing and walk for free, because that's puts even more pressure on you for this offseason and going out there and replacing these players. On top of that, you got to find a new coach too. Obviously, around the trade deadline, the Canucks probably were not expecting them to be in this situation where they're going to have to look for a coach, a second line center, possibly, a winger, and maybe another center. They probably were not thinking, oh, we're going to have to go through this in the offseason. That's a lot of stuff that they're going to have to deal with and get started on. And yeah, it's definitely puts their, offseason in a bind. And it's going to be difficult for them to do this. Obviously, now that the draft lottery has happened and it's clear that the Canucks are going to draft, they have the 15th overall pick. Obviously, for those that did not see it, Craig Button did a little projection on who each pick will be. And for the Canucks, he ended up saying that the 15th, they most likely are projected to pick Cole Reshney from the Victoria Royals with the 15th pick if they keep it. And, I did a little research looking into Reshney, and it's kind of got me thinking, should they trade their first round pick? If they actually are thinking about getting Cole Reshney and drafting him, he's a center. He could really help the team. Obviously, he won't be able to help the team right away, but he has potential. He had I believe it was a 92-point season in like 60 games in the WHL. And that blows my mind, 92 points in a 60-game season. Like, I know Rev Trev's probably going to get a bit of a kick out of this, but he outperformed Elias Pettersson in the WHL. 92 points in 60 games, and PD couldn't even get could barely get 50 points in the NHL. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with them trading their first round pick, especially if their desire is to draft Reshney. But also at the same time, they got to get that second line center, and obviously they need to give up assets in order to acquire that second line center, which they are likely going to have to do via trade. And obviously, that first round pick is desirable to a lot of people, perhaps, with it being the 15th overall pick. Obviously, they're going to have to maybe look at trading Willander. That's been a big topic of discussion. Yeah, everyone has outperformed EV40. Yeah, you're not wrong there. Even Crazy Peas outperformed Elias Pettersson this season at this point. But yeah, absolutely. If they don't end up trading that first round pick, I'm just gonna say right now, I won't be upset about it. And if they decide to keep it and actually draft Reshney, I think that'll be a big positive for the Canucks. And as what Adam mentioned earlier in that comment, trading quality players away was a big mistake. I don't think this would be a mistake if they drafted Reshney. And I still think even if they kept the pick and drafted Reshney, they could still go out there and get a second line center. It might not be like the belle of the ball, but And it's like what Kemp just said in live chat: keep the pick unless you get a great TC. Absolutely. Like if there's a trade or a potential trade that involves that pick, and it's somebody like a Sam Bennett or a top 6 second line center, then yeah, absolutely trade it. But if it's not, and if you are unable to get a like bona fide top second line center, then you keep the pick and you draft Reshney, and then develop him in Abbotsford, and then bring him up in a year or two. I don't know. Maybe he makes the team next season. Who knows? But I just like his potential, and looking at his stats, I think he would be great. Obviously, he's already playing for the Royals right now, so he's familiar with BC and playing in Vancouver. So keep him, draft him, get him. Unless obviously you can use the pick to get a high caliber top 6 second line center, and we don't know if that's actually even a possibility at this point. But no, as I mentioned, I'm on the fence with trading him or not, unless absolutely necessary. I would much prefer to trade somebody like Willander. That's just me, because I feel as though he has a lot of value, and you could get a at least decent second line center. Packaging. Obviously, it's going to take more than just Willander. You're going to have to package something. And who knows? Maybe you can even use a 2026 first round pick instead of this year's first round pick. Maybe that'll get it done. Who knows? But back to the actual topic on what you would change. Trying to rack my brain about some other things. We already went over the Gretzky stuff. I guess trying to think. I guess another one would be that's more recent, I guess, is beating the Oilers last season in Game 7 of the second round. I guess that's something that a lot of Canucks fans would want to change. I know that's kind of a bit of a cop-out, but it's just one thing that obviously we would have loved to have moved on and, beaten the Oilers and gone on to face, I forget who they ended up facing. I've had a bit of a long day, but that is obviously something that lots of Canucks fans would want to change, is if they defeated the Oilers last season and kept their playoff run going, because I can't talk enough about how great that time was. Being in the playoffs, beating Nashville, and then just that series against the Oilers was rough and tough, and it was exciting. It brought obviously playoff hockey back to Vancouver, something that we haven't seen in a very long time, and it just had the city, just pumping and excited, and I want to feel that again. Obviously, it's disappointing that it's not happening this year, back-to-back years, but I am remaining positive that for the future for the Canucks, and I'm not going to give up on this team despite everything going wrong, ranging from the PDJT crap, losing Talkett, Brock Besser leaving, most likely, Suter likely leaving. We got another live chat. This is from Justin. Good to see you, brother. The thing I would change is not the 2011 Cup or anything to do with EP40 or drafting JV or Ulevy. If I could change one thing, I would change the moment Aqua won the team. That would have saved us. You're not wrong there, Justin. Yeah, I guess that's something that I would change. Having Aqua or Francesco Aquilini actually purchasing the team is one that at least a lot of Canucks fans nowadays would likely be at the top of their list, because I feel as though Aquilini is not the right guy for the job. And obviously he's not done a great job as of late. And a lot of people are giving him flack right now because of everything that's going on. But yeah, that's definitely one for sure that a lot of Canucks fans would want to change. Um, Obviously, the 2011 Cup thing is just a personal thing, for a lot of Canucks fans. We were this close and we were not able to. Now you screwed over Gallardi and acted shady. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you're not wrong about that 100%. You know, Gallardi, I think, would have been a better owner for sure. I mean, just look at what he's done with Dallas. I mean, Dallas is rolling, and they very likely have a good chance to win the cup this year. And just look at the way that team has been run as well. And I'm also saying this because I technically, if you want to get technical, I technically work under Gallardi because he owns Grouse Mountain, which is where I work. So, um, obviously, I have a little bit of bias towards Mr. Gallardi because he's not completely my boss, but you guys know exactly what I mean by that. He's but he absolutely. I actually looked into that with Aquilini and Gallardi and them being business partners, and then him kind of going behind his back, and then there being a lawsuit because of it. So yeah, obviously, uh, Francesco is clearly shady, and and basically stole it right from out underneath Tom Gallardi, and that's something that I would change. That's another thing that I would change. I would have well, not necessarily the opposite happen, but I would have preferred it if Tom Gallardi was the owner and not Francesco Aquilini or the Aquilini family. I think we would be in a much different and much better place if we had Gallardi as the owner instead of Aqua. But that was a very good point, Justin. Once again, thanks for mentioning that. And yeah, you're 100% right on that. 100%. Trying to think of more. Trying to think of some signings maybe that here, let me maybe quickly Google some stuff and just I guess maybe perhaps another little one would be and this is might sound a little silly, but the Canucks actually winning the draft lottery. And it's something that David Quadrelli actually mentioned in our chat about a week ago. He mentioned that would be probably one thing. The Canucks actually winning a draft lottery for a change. As everyone knows, they've never won a draft lottery, and perhaps maybe winning the lottery a couple years ago when Connor Bedard was drafted, and the Canucks getting Bedard. But that's I don't know if you guys think that's a bit of a silly one, but hey, if we could have landed Bedard right away and actually won that lottery, I know the odds of that happening were slim to none, but us Canuck fans, we can dream, we can, wish, upon these things, and I think that would be something that would absolutely would change. Is it would make this team better having Connor Bedard, having guys like obviously Gretzky we talked about earlier, and yeah, there's so many possibilities and so many things in the last at least 10 years that Canucks fans could easily change in their history that perhaps would make us better and would change something that would be like monumental. I think I also going back to that Gretzky thing, I watched a little video prior to this, kind of and it was about Brian Burke talking about that trade with that potential Gretzky trade. And he mentioned that the Oilers wanted Kirk McLean and Greg Adams on top of those 5 first-round picks. So, and it makes you wonder if that trade actually went through and happened, would you guys like Kirk McLean is a Canucks legend, and how would fans react to losing a guy like Kirk McLean and Greg Adams? But in return, you would get Wayne Gretzky. We got Justin here. Keep stripping linen of the sea for Messier. Yeah, we already went over that one. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Kempner mentioned the Bertuzzi Moore incident, which derailed Bertuzzi's career and pretty much killed the West Coast Express. Absolutely right. 100%. I even mentioned, not having us trading Linden on my list, despite me not being okay with the trade whatsoever. Let me just make that clear. I didn't want the trade at all. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't make that Trevor Linden trade, you don't get Todd Bertuzzi. And talking about the Bertuzzi Moore thing, at the same time, if you don't trade Trevor Linden, that Bertuzzi Moore incident doesn't happen. So it's a bit of a I don't know how to really describe it, but it's a hard thing to say. If the Canucks hadn't traded Trevor Linden, obviously Bertuzzi incident doesn't happen. If you don't trade Trevor Linden, the Canucks don't get Todd Bertuzzi, and the West Coast Express doesn't exist. So it's kind of hard to balance those two, and really choose that as something that you would change, because one thing leads to another, and then it's kind of like, I don't know. Guess you can use like a bit of a Marvel reference here, like the multiverse whole thing, and like what if and whatnot. But yeah, like there's so much that's happened in the 50+ year history of the Vancouver Canucks, and it is just, there's so many things to choose from, and this is such a big talking point, and something that a lot of fans can like fantasize about, discuss, and the possibilities are endless for in regards to that. And yeah, so I'm gonna cut this video a little short. As I mentioned at the start, it's been actually a bit of a tough day for me mentally. I've had some personal stuff going on, but I wanted to get this video out because I was really excited about this topic, and I thought it was a good topic of discussion, especially with the Canucks not being in the playoffs and whatnot. Got Justin, 1970 wheel spin that gave Buffalo the first pick. The franchise has filled with so many moments. Excellent topic tonight. Appreciate that, Justin. And thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Wishing you the best. Yeah, really appreciate that, Justin. Good to see you, brother. But I'm gonna, I think, cut this short. We're going about 30 minutes. But yeah, so feel free to post more things that you would want to change in Canucks history in the comment section down below. Feel free to post as many as you want. Just rattle them off. I'll obviously reply to the comments and give my take on it. But yeah, absolutely keep firing away. And I'm not sure what my posting schedule will be for the rest of the week. I'm still trying to figure some stuff out, but I will keep you guys posted 100%. Also, before I do go though, if you guys peep the hat, I just got this done the other day. I don't know if you can really see. There you go, the logo on there and everything. I am planning to develop more of these and get like a bunch of them printed and made. And I'm thinking about maybe even doing a giveaway at some point during the summer and giving a bunch of these away. So stay tuned for that. As always, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the Line Change and want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks and your Abbotsford Canucks, as I will be recapping the Abbotsford game possibly either tomorrow or Friday. So stay tuned for that. Also, if you'd like to find us on social media, you can find us on both Twitter /X @LineChangeVan. You can find us on Instagram at The Line Change. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search The Line Change and you can find our Facebook page. If you are listening to this on a audio podcast, and you can find us, or rather, if you prefer to listen to us on an audio podcast, you can find us on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I will be uploading this to Spotify, the audio version of this, so stay tuned for that. And as always, go Canucks go, and I'll see you guys next time.